Welcome to Project Outcast, an Outpost WFM production.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Project Outcast. And today I want to go into a bit of absenteeism trends and maybe talk about absenteeism reports specifically. So, have you ever asked for an absenteeism trend report from your WFM team and got a view of average absenteeism per day? Maybe just on a line chart on Excel, maybe just pointing out which day of the week had the highest absenteeism? How useful has that been to you? Other than just the Tuesday seems to be the highest day with absenteeism, I mean, what actual value did you get out of it to improve the business? Or what was the outcome merely just to be harder on your employees who are absent on those days? Look, it is difficult to control absenteeism. I mean, after all, we are dealing with people and people are emotional. Controlling absenteeism, it really is a difficult subject. It is a task on its own. But going back to absenteeism trends, if the data was presented in the way that I've mentioned above, that here's a line chart in Excel, Tuesdays have the highest absenteeism, my first question would be, why is there such high absenteeism on Tuesdays? So, based on my experience, the root cause of absenteeism, specifically agents in a contact center, is usually related to four things. What I've picked up is that the four main categories that this would fall into would be health related absence, which is your typical colds and flus. Another unique thing would be the job market. Now, new opportunities at other contact centers and other companies usually occur at certain times. Maybe it's a BPO that's landed a new client and now they've got um, positions open for 10, 20, maybe more agents. Other opportunities could come up whereby it's a captive environment, they've expanded, they've entered into a new market segment. So the job market itself also plays an important role in understanding the absence, because agents could take absence to attend these interviews or go for those tests or assessments for those interviews and just call it as an absence day. The third category that I've seen is workload stress. Now, inconsistent WFM planning causing staff to take back to back interactions, well, that does lead to workload stress. Not having the right amount of FTE in place also leads to workload stress. Always canceling off phone activities and always scheduling overtime and always being in a position whereby there's calls holding or interactions waiting and there's pressure on the staff. And if that goes on too long, to create stress, and that's going to end up in agents being absent, whether it's an actual stress related condition or if it's just a day that they call in and say, look, they're exhausted, they're tired, they just can't do it. So workload stress is really important to understand in terms of absence, and then everything else will fall into just a general category whereby it's anything else typically that doesn't fall into the first three categories. So what I've seen is health related, job market, and workload stress being the three main categories for absence, and then everything else goes into the general bucket of absence. Now, why am I talking about this? So, if we look at the number of absent days, whether it's the total or the average, in isolation, it will not provide any insight into understanding your workforce, and it prevents management from making positive changes in the business. These changes need to happen to improve employee engagement, satisfaction, loyalty to the company. These will ultimately improve your customer experience, but without that understanding of why your agents are absent and just going in with the fact that they've been absent twice in that cycle, or they've been absent every day on a Friday, or they've been absent too often based on just the number of instances of absence for that specific agent. Just looking at the numbers, that's not really going to help you improve the employee engagement on the floor. When we start looking at the actual reasons provided by the staff, it starts opening up a different conversation as to why you're experiencing the absence. Now, the absent reasons provided are not just an HR statistic. It needs to be a WFM statistic as well. Seeing that, in WFM, our resources are the humans. So it only makes sense that WFM itself has a good understanding of the reasons for the absence, as well as the number of absence and when they occur. Now, if this is done correctly, the WFM team should be able to provide insights into absenteeism trends based on real world factors such as a burnout percentage, which is the increase in absenteeism that is expected after a very busy period in the contact center. So let me say that again. So you can work out a burnout percentage, and it shouldn't be a target. It shouldn't be a something that you'd want to have on your stats all the time, but it should be a trigger for the WFM team to know that in the event of a very busy period in the contact center, we can expect absenteeism to spike, and we can get that from the historical data, and we can include that in the shrinkage when we are planning for those busy periods. The second part to that is understanding what that percentage is. What impact is that having on your staff relative to the reasons that you are getting back from your HR discussions with those agents that have been absent? If they were absent because of workload stress, we need to understand what was the workload stress that caused it. Was it busy periods that lasted a month, 2 months? Then it's a case of being incorrectly geared. And those are the conversations we need to have. If it's a case of there wasn't any increase in workload or activity during that time, let's look at external factors like, are there any other companies that are employing? Are there any other changes in the job market that would cause agents to take an absent day, just this random absent day, maybe because of them wanting to go for an interview or do an assessment, or follow that interview process, and that may lead to resignations later on. So absenteeism is a number, but the main thing is understanding what is causing the absenteeism is where the value comes in. It's where we're going to sit down and say, we know that out of the 20 instances of absence, 10 of them were related to seasonal colds and flus, and 5 of them were just unplanned single day absences for unknown reasons. And those are the ones that you got to go and look into, because those are the anomalies. Those are the ones you got to get insight into from the agents to have a session and understand, first of all, from a health perspective, are they okay? Secondly, what was the reason behind it? Did they need some time off with their family? Was it a certain situation? And again, the details of this should stay within HR, but the actual reason for the absence should filter back to WFM, because at the end of the day, the shrinkage percentage that in WFM takes into account the full absenteeism figure. But if we start segmenting the absenteeism figure to understand what we can control out of it and what we can't, we are in a better position to plan a much more flexible shrinkage percentage. In the event of a busy period, we know that we're going to see some spikes. We could make a few adjustments in the contact center to understand or to mitigate the impact that we potentially will have after a busy period. Seasonal colds and flus, we know that's coming up if we have those reasons in place. And again, instead of applying a flat shrinkage, we fluctuate the shrinkage percent and try and anticipate and get ahead of it before it becomes a problem in the contact center. So preempting absenteeism, even resignations, it helps improve the efficiency of your business. And considering the workforce that we have today, it is in our best interest to take that time out and understand what are the reasons for our absenteeism and how WFM can start drilling down deeper into the absenteeism percent and segmenting it to understand what that absenteeism reasons are, what we can control, what is it a reflection of in terms of the business planning, and I'm referring back to not having enough staff, and that is causing burnout. And at the end of it, preempting the absenteeism would focus your efforts better into running the business and going back to improving how you plan the business and how you execute that plan. It is the start of what management would need to look at in order for them to make those positive changes in the business to improve the employee engagement, the employee satisfaction, and the loyalty of the employee, which will ultimately go on to improve the customer experience.
This has been Project Outcast, an Outpost WFM production. Go to outpostwfm.co.za for more.